Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to connect your Next.js 14 application to Amazon AWS's S3 buckets. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Before we get into the video, guys, I just want to let you know that we are close to a 500 subscriber goal. And if you guys like this video, enjoy, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It'll mean a lot for the channel. We're this close to our goal. And with all that said, let's jump right into the video. All right, guys, so like I said, this is about connecting AWS S3 buckets to Next.js 14. So to begin with, what exactly is an S3 bucket? So S3 buckets are simple storage services, hence the hence the three S's, so simple storage service. That's why it's S3. It's a scalable object storage service that's provided by AWS meaning Amazon Web Services, and it's used to store files structurally, reliably, and easily accessibly. So in order to store your files on Amazon Web Services, you can use a feature, or you can use the platform S3 buckets. And imagine buckets as folders. So imagine the bucket being a folder and files within the bucket being called objects. So a bucket is a container in S3 where files, meaning objects, are stored. So each bucket has a unique name across all AWS accounts. So let's say you sign into AWS and you have a bucket created. So if your bucket is structured for, let's say, Marvel application, you can name it something unique for that application. And if you want to make something for entertainment, you can also name it something unique for entertainment. So you don't always have to cluster all your buckets, or all your objects within one bucket. So you can have various buckets for different objects. So with that said, let's jump right into the key features of S3. So basically, S3 has virtually an unlimited amount of data that can be stored within it. That makes it a great tool to use to store your data. You have file access and permissions, meaning there's security features. So permissions in S3 control who can access the bucket or the objects and what they can do with them. So in this application, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be given access so that the user can read, write, and delete the objects within our buckets. So bucket level permission is something we kind of just went over. It allows permission to be set on the whole bucket, making it so that either everyone can view the file in the bucket or only specific users can add files to the bucket. So think of the bucket as a folder, like I said. So in this folder, you can have it as a private folder or a public folder. If it's a public folder, then anyone can access, add, delete, or whatever, as long as it's specified within the list of permissions given. So the policy, basically, so you give it a policy saying these are the things that are permitted for certain users, and if it's public, you're kind of just giving everyone access based on the policy given. And if it's private, let's say that folder is private, you need permission to do anything within that folder, within that bucket. So object level permissions, so these apply to the individual files inside the bucket. The individual files are just named objects. This can grant access to certain users to access it, even if the file is private. So this is kind of what we just touched on. For you to access a private file, access has to be given. So you can have permission or security, let's say security on a bucket level, as well as the object level. So that's what makes S3 so great. So what else do we have? So S3 has various tools and resources. So for example, we have AWS console. So in order to access AWS S3, you can have AWS console, which is a web-based user-friendly tool. It kind of mimics a website or a web application where basically a graphical interface is used to create and manage S3 buckets and files. We also have the command line interface, so AWS CLI, and this allows the user to type out commands to control buckets and files instead of using that console, that website feature. And then lastly, we have AWS SDKs, which are just software development kits. That's what we're going to be using in this program, within this application, I mean. And these are just tools that can be used directly with your programming language. So we're going to be using JavaScript in this one because it's Next.js, and it aids with directly interacting with S3 buckets. So that's what makes S3 so great. We have these three methods of interacting with our S3 buckets. So we have S3 and data management systems. So why can't we just use data management systems instead of S3? Data management systems would be things such as MongoDB and PostgreSQL in comparison to S3. And that is because S3 buckets are designed for storing files, which are objects like images, videos, and documents, and backups without a fixed structure. Whereas DBMS, which are just database management systems, such as MongoDB and PostgreSQL, can handle structured tables and semi-structured data better for use cases like data project catalog. So meaning with database management systems, you're looking at more structured data. You're not looking at images, videos. Think of, like I said, S3 buckets as a folder, whereas database management system can be loosely tied to like an Excel spreadsheet in a sense. It's not that it's an Excel spreadsheet, but if you're going to juxtapose both of them or contrast them, one will be like a folder and the other will be more like an Excel spreadsheet. And S3s are very cost effective. S3 offer low cost scalable storage, especially for infrequently accessed data. So within AWS, there are things called like Glacier files and Glacier model files and things like that. If you go deep into AWS, you'll understand what's going on there. And all these files or all these data systems are basically for files that are not accessed as much. So if you don't have a file that you're accessing a lot, then you don't want to be paying a lot for it. So you just want it there, and whenever you access it or whatever, it should be low cost. S3 offers that. Databases, however, once you start putting stuff in storage, regardless of if you access it or not, the more the size of the data, the more the cost becomes. So that is a con for database management system. That's why S3 kind of has a good reputation to just save your data, and it can save a whole lot of data. Scalability and performance is another big one. S3 is infinite. S3 is infinitely S3 is infinitely scalable and maintains performance for high volume storage, making it reliable for large file repos. So basically with S3, you can scale it in infinitely. You can add as much data as you want, and it will scale. And like we said earlier, it's pretty much unlimited data that could be stored in there, virtually unlimited. So with databases, they are scalable, but they become more complex and are impacted by larger complex queries. So if you have a long Excel spreadsheet, for example, we're just using Excel spreadsheet as an example for a database management system. The more you put in there, the harder it is for you to you can still scale it, you can still keep adding things to it, but when you want to query things, it becomes very complex. So the best use cases is S3 is used for media libraries, backups, and logs, while database management systems are ideal for applications with structured data, complex queries, and relationships like e-commerce websites or e-commerce applications or social networks. So in this situation, we're going to be showing you how to connect an S3 bucket with our Next.js 14 application. We've already kind of gone over how to connect DBMSs, which are database management systems, by way of MongoDB, Mongoose, PostgreSQL, using Prisma ORM and storing it within Superbase database. So we've already kind of touched on that. That will be linked at the end of this video if you want to go see that. It's the last video on this before this video. So I'll link it in at the end of this video. So with all that said, let's jump right into AWS console and let's see how we can create first off the S3 bucket before we write the code to start storing things within our S3. So here we are within our console home within AWS. So right now I'm signed in as the root user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an S3 bucket. So here we can go ahead and just search S3. So when you do that, you will see scalable storage in the cloud. We'll just go ahead and click on that. And once it comes up, as you can see, I have a couple of things already within my bucket. So I have a couple of buckets already created. So what we want to do now is we're just going to say create bucket. And here it's going to be a general purpose. It's going to be a general purpose bucket type. We're going to scroll down, and here we have to give it a bucket name. So we're going to call this S3 S3 YouTube. So that's what we're going to call this. We can leave it as that. Now we're going to say ACLs disabled, which is recommended here. So what we're going to be doing in this is we're going to make this a public access. We're going to make this a public access bucket. We're going to have to disable all the ACLs. So if you want to get into AWS, there's some key terms that you're going to learn, but basically we're just going to disable the security for it in order to allow public access. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're just going to unblock it. And here, because we're unblocking it, so it says turning off block all public access might result in the bucket and objects within the bucket becoming public. So it recommends that you turn it on unless public access is required for specific and verified use cases such as static website hosting. So here we have to kind of acknowledge that we understand what we're doing. So for the sake of this video, we're going to be blocking public access. We're going to be allowing public access. Now, just a disclaimer, this doesn't always have to be done for every project you do. This is just an example to show you how public access being disabled works. So this is not a one size fits all kind of procedure. It's on a case by case basis. So now that we've explained that, let's go ahead and acknowledge that. So we're stating that we acknowledge the current send might result in this bucket and other objects within becoming public. So we're acknowledging that. Now we can go down and bucket versioning. We're just going to keep that disabled. We're not going to add any tags as that is optional. We're going to keep the default encryption as is. And then we can go ahead and just hit create bucket. So now it's creating the bucket. As you can see, it's called S3 YouTube. So that bucket has been created. So now that we've created that bucket, let's go right into it. And here we want to give it some permissions. So within bucket policy, we want to search some permissions. So for example, if we go over to permissions here, here we have block all public access, and this is off. And then for bucket policy, we want to add some bucket policies here. So here we can go into edit. And as you can see, we have no bucket policy currently. So what we want to do is we want to generate a policy. So let's go over to policy generator. And here the type of policy will be S3. So S3 bucket policy. The principal here, we're just going to use this asterisk here. So we're going to say asterisk. And then for AWS service, it's going to be Amazon S3. Make sure you're not checking all services. Just make sure it's just Amazon S3. And then for actions, what you're going to state is we're going to come down here. So for the actions, what we're going to say is we're going to go to get. Let's look for get options. So let's see G. Is there a way to search? Or we could just scroll down. So it should be get object. So we're just only going to do get object, and that's it. So we're only using get object, so make sure it's not all actions. So for AWS service, it's just Amazon S3 and not all services. So it should just be Amazon S3, and then make sure all services is not checked, as it's not right now. So this is not checked. All services should not be checked. And then actions is just one action selected, and that is get object. So let's make sure that's what it is. So it should be get object. So just get object, not get object ACL, just get object. So it's just get object, and that's the one action selected, get object. So after we do that, make sure all actions is not checked. Make sure all actions is not checked. Make sure all actions is not checked. So both of these should not be checked. Awesome. So now for the Amazon resource name, what we're going to state is, let's come back here and we're just going to copy this bucket ARN, this bucket ARN. We're going to copy it and then we're going to place it right in here. Awesome. So that's it. And we're just going to, where is it? So we're just going to add statement. So as you can see, principal is this asterisk, effect is allow, action is S3 get object, resource is ARN AWS S3 and it's our name S3 YouTube, and conditions is none. And that's it. So conditions is none, and you can delete if you want, but conditions is none. So we can go ahead and generate policy. So in order to do that, we can just copy all of this. So we can come here and copy this whole thing, Control C. We can close out of it, and we can just close out of this. So within here, we can just paste that policy in there, and we can save changes. So here it says action does not apply to any resource in a statement, which is correct. So what we want to do is we want to go to our resource here, and we want to state backslash and asterisk. So we want to place an asterisk there. So now we can go ahead and save changes, and just like that, it has been saved. So this is what we have so far. So it's been saved, and this is it. So we don't need to do anything else. What we can do now is we can go right back to our buckets, and for right now it says viewer analyzer for USE. So let's make sure our properties here, let's see how, not even this, let's go to permissions, not properties. So block all public access is off. So let's edit this and make sure, yep. So save changes, confirm, and confirm. So that is still block all public access, which is off. So that's good. Yeah, block all public access is still off. So that's good. And that's it. So it says successfully edited block public access setting for this bucket. So we have block all public access is off. So let's refresh this. And we still have block all public access is off. So that's awesome. So let's go back to buckets. And so we have successfully created our S3 YouTube bucket. So now what we want to do is we want to go into our IAM, which stands for Identity and Access Manager, or Identity and Access Management. So we're going to go into IAM, which is Identity and Access Management, and we're going to create a user to get access keys that will in turn give the user permission to access or transform the content. So what we want to do is we're going to go into IAM like we just stated. And for IAM, we can either type it in here. So IAM. So there we go. So it gives manage. So it allows. So IAM, it says manage access to AWS resources. So we're just going to click on that. So within IAM dashboard, what we're going to do is we're going to go to users, and we're going to create a user. So let's go ahead and create user. And for username, we're going to say my name. So we're just going to say Akin S3 YouTube. Awesome. So we're not going to provide user access to whatever. We're not going to do this as is optional. We're just going to keep that blank. And then we're going to go to next. Okay, so I figured. So let's say Akin S3. Let's see if that works. There we go. So that works. So the new username is Akin S3. We're not going to provide user access to AWS Management Console. This is optional, so we're going to keep that blank. And that's it. So we're just going to next. And now it says add user to group, copy permissions, and attach policies directly. Now, if we had a group or we want to create a group, we can do add users to group, but it's just one singular user. So the way we go about it is we just attach policies directly. So we're going to go to add policies directly, and we're just going to create a policy together. So we're going to go ahead and create policy. And for policy, we're going to specify a couple of policies. So for policy here, we're going to say S3, and then we're gonna filter through and add several policies. So for filter actions, we're gonna state list. So list all. There we go. List all my buckets. So we're gonna pick that, and then we're gonna state list bucket. There we go. And then get bucket location. Put object. Put object ACL. Get object. Delete object. Awesome. So we should have 7 actions, as it says here, 7 actions, and that's it. So these are all the actions we have. Here, you don't have to check this. So it says manual actions, add actions, all S3 actions. You do not want to do this. You only want to give access to these. So do not check this. All S3 actions should remain unchecked as it is right now. And you just want the access level to be these. Resource, you can just say all, that's fine. So we can just keep it as all. And then, so we can keep this as all rather than specify. So we're going to keep it as all. And then we can go ahead next. And the policy name here is going to be, we're just going to call this project S3 YouTube. And that's it. So we can keep the description as optional and leave it blank. And then we can just create policy. So now that policy has been created. So if we go back to, let's close out of this policies here. So if we go back here, we can attach policies directly. And now let's refresh this. So let's reload it. Oh, well, we got to create that username again. So I can't remember what we used as the last username, but I'm just going to say Keen S3 YouTube. And we're going to keep it as that. So for provide user access to the AWS Management Console optional, we're going to keep that unchecked. And then if you're creating pragmatic access through access keys, blah, 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 you can generate them after you create this IAM user. So this is important, but it's telling you you can basically you can get access to the access keys after you generate them, after you create this IAM user. So we're all good. Provide user access to AWS Management Console optional, that is unchecked, and we can just go ahead and hit next. So here we're going to attach policy directly, and we're going to search for that policy that we created, and that policy is going to be, I believe we called it YouTube or something like that. What does we call it? Keen. You know what? Let's just do this. Customer managed project S3 YouTube is what we called it. So we're going to select this, and that's the only one we want, and then we're just going to click next. And we're going to create user. Awesome. So Akeen S3 YouTube has been created. And the reason why we created specific policies for it is because we want to make sure that we want to make sure that we're doing something called permission of least privilege. So we want to make sure the users that we create have the least privileged amount of access, meaning they can only access the things that are required for them to access. That way you don't, that way there's minimal security risk to your account or your application. So now if we come into Akeen's S3 YouTube and click on that, here we can see access key 1, create access key, and we need this access key. This is how we're going to connect our SDK, connect our application to S3 buckets using the SDK. So the way we go about this is we go ahead and click on create access key, and it's gonna basically download and show us some access keys. I'm not gonna show you all those credentials because that is sensitive information. But when you go ahead and click create access key, as you can see, it's going to ask you where the use case. So it's going to say use case, access key, best practices and alternatives, and it's going to say use case. And here, my suggestion is to use local code. Now, depending on how advanced you are or anything, you can go ahead and pick whatever you want. I'm going to use local code for this one. So once you hit local code, you're going to go ahead and hit I understand the above recommendation and want to proceed to create an access key. And then you can go ahead and hit next. And here it's going to ask you for a description tag, which is optional. It's optional, so I'm not going to click anything, but I'm just going to go ahead and create that access key. And then I'll see you guys when we set up our application. So now that we're in our Visual Studio Code, we're going to go ahead and create our project. So here we're going to say make directory, and this is going to be called S3 YouTube. Yeah, let's just call it S3 YouTube. We're going to CD into S3 YouTube, clear that out. And here we're going to state npx create next app at latest. We're gonna go ahead and do that. And here we go. So it's gonna say it needs to install the following packages. We're just gonna say yes, and that's fine. Our project name is gonna be called Project S3. No, we're not using TypeScript. No, we're not using ESLint. Well, yes, we're using ESLint. Yes, we're using Tailwind. Yes, yes. We're just gonna accept everything. Would you like to use TurboPack for the net? No, no. And we're going to do this. All right, so it's now being created. We can go ahead and clear out of this. And then what we can actually do is we can open up the folder. So we're just going to open folder, and we're going to open this one and open. And here we go, Project S3. So with this, the main thing we're looking for right now is our .env file. So let's see if we can find that. So we have git ignore here. We doesn't seem like we have a .env file. So what we want to do is we're going to come into our project S3 and we're going to say new file. And within new file, for new file, we're going to say .env and we're going to save that. So this is going to be our .env file. And within git ignore, we got to make sure that we have .env in there, and it is. So we're going to close out of that. And for our .env, what we want to do is we're going to place a couple of things within our .env, and that goes as follows. So we want the bucket name. So we're going to say bucket name, and that's going to be a string. We want the bucket region, so let's do this. So bucket region, let's do this. And we want the access key ID, so access key ID. And we want the secret access key. So we want the secret access key. So with these categories that we have here within our .env and these strings, these empty strings, we're going to fill them up with the information we have from our secret access key, or the access keys we got from AWS when we created the user. So that's what we're going to be posted in here. So for the bucket name, remember the bucket name is the name we allocated for that bucket. So the bucket name is the name we gave it. The bucket region here, you can just put, for example, if it's in 1A US East or something like that, you can just simply place 1A US East. You don't have to put like the whole region. You can just cut it down to that. The access key ID is given to you when you create the access key, and the secret access key is also given to you when you do that. So that's pretty much all I'm going to show you within the .env, as it is sensitive information. And then we can go ahead and create our application. So when we go ahead and state npm run dev here, actually, we're just going to cd into project S3, clear that out, npm run dev, and we're going to wait for it to open up. So we're going to go ahead and open this up. And as you can see, well, currently we have an error. Why do we have an error? It doesn't matter. So this does deploy. So let's go ahead and do this. So this does, I said this does deploy, this does show. So we can go ahead and head back over to our project. And here we're just going to clear out a few things. So within SRC, within our source folder, we're going to clear out within our global CSS. We're just going to clear all this out and just keep it at Tailwind. Awesome. We're going to close out of this layout. We could just leave it this way. Page. So for page.js, we can go ahead and from this div, we're just gonna do this. So let's close out of this, and then let's do this. Awesome. So we're gonna take from main to main, and then we're just gonna delete all that. So we don't need main as well. And we can take out everything else. So footer to footer. Awesome. And we can take out this import. Cool. So now if we go over to Chrome, you can see there should be nothing there. But if we state, let's state h1 hello world and save that. As you can see, it states hello world here. So we have our application pretty much going. Awesome. So we can go ahead and just close out of this. And now, so what we want to do now is install the SDK for Amazon Web Services. So what we're going to do is we're going to go on Google and install that. So here within the terminal, we're just going to open a new one and let's cd into it, project S3. And what we're going to be using is we're going to paste this in, and it's going to be npm install at AWS SDK /client -S3. And we're just going to head and install that. Awesome. So that's been installed. So we can clear out of that, and we can just close out of this. Awesome. So now what we want to do first is let's go ahead and create that form data. So let's do this. So if we open this up, let's split this in half, and let's split this to about here and about here. Awesome. So we're going to be creating a form that's going to be sending our, that's going to upload our data to the S3 bucket. So the way we go about that is we come here and we're just going to make it a single page. So we can come into page.js here and we can just build it in here. It's not that big of a deal. So we'll go ahead and take out this hello world and save it. Awesome. So here we're going to have import, import use state. So let's do it this way, use state, and this should be from React. So okay, so we got to call this a client component. So we're going to say use client. Okay, do we have another error here? So hydration failed because didn't match the client. As a result, the tree was blah, blah. So let's do npm install, clear. Let's close out of this. Let's clear out of this. npm run dev. Let's refresh this. Let's see. Use state from React. So before we go further, let's go ahead and just do this as well. Let's open this up. Let's cd into project S3, and here we're going to be installing something called the pre-signed URL utility. And that goes as follows. So we're just going to paste this in here. And the way that looks is it's going to say npm install at AWS SDK /S3 pre-signed post. And we're just going to enter that. And what this does is this package provides the utilities for creating pre-signed post URLs. So we're going to be using the create pre-signed post function. So we can actually clear this out and we can just delete that. Cool. And then here, we already have use state here. So what we want to do is we're also going to be using use effect. So we're going to say use effect. So we're going to get that from React. And now what we want to do is here, we're going to state const file and set file. And this will equal use state null. And we're doing this to hold the selected file. And now we want to state we want to state that we'll hold the list of items that we fetch from the bucket. So we're going to say const bucket items as well as set bucket items. And this is going to equal use state. This is going to be an array because it's holding a bunch of information. Now we want a function that's going to handle the file selection by the user. So that's going to go as follows. So we're going to say const handle file change is equal to, we're going to have an event here. And then we're going to state, we're going to get the first file selected if we have any file selected. So we're going to say const selected file is equal to e.target.files. So if we so if there's e.target.files, then we want event, so well, e.target.files, and we want to pick the first one. Let's change this to event actually. So let's say event. There we go, and we'll use event target.files. So we're picking the first one. Else, if we don't have any files, let's wrap this. We're going to say null. Cool. So we're going to say set file, and file is going to be selected file. So here we're saving the file in the state. Cool. Now we want a function to upload the selected file to the S3 bucket. So we're going to create another function here, and we're just going to say const upload file, and this is going to be asynchronous, and we're going to say event, and here we're going to say event.prevent default. So this just prevents the form from refreshing the page. And we're going to state if there's no file, then we want to alert, please select a file to upload. Cool. And then we want to return that. Now we want to have a try catch. So within the try, we're going to say we want to request a pre-signed post URL from the backend. So we're going to say const response. And since we haven't created the backend yet, what we're going to do is we're just going to keep this as an empty string. But the method here is going to be post. So awesome. Headers here are going to be content type, which is going to be application/JSON. And then we're going to have the body, and the body here is going to be a JSON.stringify. So JSON.stringify. And here we're going to have the file name be file name. File.name. Awesome. Then we're going to have file type. And this is going to be file.type. Awesome. And what this is doing is it's sending the file name and the file type. So now we can state if if there's no response.ok, so response, of course we spelled it wrong here. There we go. So if there's no response.ok, then we just want to throw new error, and we're going to state failed to generate pre-signed URL. And now we want to extract the pre-signed URL and the remaining fields from the response. So we're going to say const URL as well as the fields equals await response.json. Awesome. So now for the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to create a form data object. So we're creating a form data object to send the file and the required fields to the S3 bucket. So what we're going to say is const form data is equal to new form data. So I should say const. Cool. And now we're going to say object dot entries, and we're going to pass in fields. And here we're going to say for each. So we want to go through each of them. And here we're going to say key as well as the value. So key, not keyboard event. So key key, there we go, as well as the value. Awesome. And here we're going to say it's form data dot append key value. And what this is doing is it's adding all the required fields. So now we can state form data. So form data, there we go, dot append file and file. And here what we're doing is we're adding a file to the form data. So what we want to do next is now we want to upload the file directly to the S3 using a pre-signed post URL. So the way we go about that is we say const upload response is equal to await fetch, and we're going to say URL, and it's going to be method, which is post. All right, and then we're going to say body, and the body here is going to be form data, and we can just keep it at that. That's fine. Awesome. So now we want to see if the upload was successful. So we want something in return. So if the upload response dot OK is not successful, then we want to throw new error. And this is going to say failed to upload file. And now we want to alert file uploaded successfully. Cool. So this would notify the user that it's been successful. And then for catch, let's just do this. Awesome. So for catch error, we're going to state console.error upload error. And here we're going to say error. So there's a this will state the error when there's an error. And then we want to alert now that an error occurred. So an error occurred when uploading file. Awesome. So now we have a good error handling. So now what we want to do is we also want a function that's going to fetch the list of items that's stored within the bucket. So we can save items within the bucket, and now we can also get items from the bucket. So what we want to do is we're going to come down here and we're going to say const fetch bucket items, and this is going to be asynchronous, and we're going to have an arrow function here, and this is going to be try catch. And within the try, we're going to say const response is equal to await fetch. And since we don't have a backend for that now, we're just going to keep it at this. We want to see if the backend responded with an error. So we're going to say if response.ok. So if there's no response.ok, we want to throw an error. So throw a new error. And this is going to be failed to fetch bucket items. Cool. Now we want to extract the list of items from the response. So we're going to say const, and this is going to be items, and this is going to be equal to await response.json. And we want to set bucket items to items. So this can be over here. There we go. So here we're saving the items within the state. So for error, we're going to say console.error, error fetching bucket items, and this is going to be error. Cool. So now we want to use useEffect to get the item. So we're going to say useEffect, and here we're going to have an arrow, and it's going to say fetch bucket items dot catch, and this is going to be error console dot error fetch bucket items error. And we're going to have error. Awesome. So here we could just give, we're just going to give this empty dependency array. And then for return, and let's bring this down one. Awesome. So now we have a return here, and we're going to use div. So we're going to say div. Awesome. And now we're going to have a form, and this form is going to be on submit, and this is going to be upload file. So we have form on submit, upload file. Let's close this. And then within the form, we're going to have another div, and this div is going to have label HTML4, and this is going to be file, and we're just going to say select file. Awesome. As you can see, it renders here, and then we have an input. So this is going to be input, and this is going to be input type is equal to file, and we're going to have on change here is going to be handle file change. And now we're going to have the closing div. Oh, well, we already have our closing div there. So now we're going to have a button, and this button type is going to be upload. Actually, it's going to be submit. And then the text here is going to be upload. Cool. And that's going to be it for the form. So down here, we're going to have another button. And here it's going to be on click, and it's going to be fetch bucket items. So here we're going to say fetch bucket items, and we're just going to list it here. So UL, and we're going to say, so here we're just going to render each item in a bucket as a list. So we're going to say bucket items dot map item, and then we're going to use li, and then this is going to be item. Let's give it a key here. And the key here is going to be item as well. Cool. So we can go ahead and make this look fancy and nice later on, but let's go ahead and work on the backend portion. So in order to create the backend portion, what we're going to have to do is we can close out of this, and then we're going to come into app here and create a new folder. And this is going to be called API. And within API, we're going to have a new file. And this file is going to be called pre-signed URL. Actually, it's going to be a new folder as well. So there's going to be a new folder within this. And this is going to be called pre-signed URL. And within pre-signed URL, we're going to have a new file called route.js. So we're within route.js, we're going to say import S3 client. Awesome. And then we're also going to import create a pre-signed post. Cool. Now we're going to initialize our S3 client using our credentials and region from our environment variables. So we're going to say const S3 client is equal to new S3 client. And this is going to be region process.env.aws. What did I save it as? Bucket region. So bucket region. And then the credentials here. So credentials. Awesome. So credentials. So this should be a comma. There we go. So credentials here is going to be access key ID is equal to process.env.access key ID. And then we're going to have secret access key. And this is going to be process.env.secret access key. Cool. Now we're going to have to create a pre-signed post URL to upload those files. So we're going to say const generate pre-signed URL. And this is going to be a sync. We're going to have the bucket. So bucket. We're going to have the file name. File name. We're going to have the file type. And here we're going to say const params is equal to, and here we're going to have bucket as bucket. We're going to have key as the file name. So after a key here, typically you can have conditions, which for security reasons will be great to limit things like file size and, security policies and things like that. You can enable that for security policies. But I'm not going to use conditions for this because I'm only going to be putting in like very few documents to show you how it works. So what I'm going to do is for the fields, I'm going to use fields here, and I'm just going to state content type. And the content type here is going to be file type. And then expires. So this URL is going to expire after 10 minutes. So 600 here. So that should be a comma. There we go. So now we can return. Actually, you know what? Let's use conditions. So I'll just show you how it works. So here, conditions. We're going to state the condition here is going to be content length range It's going to be 0. And then we're going to say 1048 5760. So 1048 5760. So 1048 5760. And this just limits the file size to 10 megabytes. So the file size here is limited to 10 megabytes. So anything over 10 megabytes will not be allowed to be saved. So that's all this is saying. It's kind of a lot, but this is a great way to configure your pre-signed URL. So you don't necessarily have to have it like this, but it's just a great example. So now we can return that. So we can return create pre-signed, there we go, create pre-signed post with S3 client. There we go, and params. So now we just generated the pre-signed post URL in the backend, and what we want to do is we want to export a sync function, and this is going to be a post. And here we're going to pass in request, and now we're going to say try catch. So here what we're going to do is we're going to parse the request body for the file and the name. So now we're going to parse the request body for the name and type, for the file name and type. So we're going to say const file name and file type is equal to await request.json. So now we want to give it some error handling to ensure both file and name, both the file name and the file type are provided. So we're going to say if there's no file name or there's no file type, then we want to return next request.json, and this is going to be error file name and file type are required. And then we're going to have the status of 400. Cool. Now we want to generate the pre-signed post URL. So we're going to say const pre-signed post is equal to await generates pre-signed post pre-signed URL, and we're going to say process.env dot bucket name file name file type. And then we're going to just send that back. So we're going to say return next request. Oh, my bad. So this should be next response, not next request. So next response.json. And this is going to be pre-signed post. And for the error, we're just going to state console.error. And this is going to be error generating pre-signed URL. Error. And we're going to say return next response.json. Error failed to generate pre-signed URL. Awesome. Let's give it a status of 500. All right, so just like that, we have created our pre-signed URL. So after doing the pre-signed URL, what we want to do now is within API, we want to create another folder, and this folder is going to be called get bucket items. So we're going to say get bucket items. Let's just call it that. And then new file, and this is going to be route.js. Awesome. So go ahead and close that. And then here, what we're going to do is we're going to import that S3 client again. So S3 client. And then we're also going to import list object v2 command. There we go. And that's it. So now we want to initialize an S3 client using the credentials and region from our environment variables. So we're going to say const S3 client is equal to new S3 client. And here we're going to say region is going to be process.env.bucket region. And then we're going to state credentials. So credentials, awesome, is going to be access key ID, which is going to be process.env dot access key ID. And then we're going to state secret key ID, secret access key is going to be process.env dot secret access key. There we go. And that's it. So now we want to write a function to fetch the list of items within the bucket. So we're going to say const fetch bucket items. And this is going to be an arrow function. So a sync. And this is going to be bucket. And here we're going to say const command is equal to new list object v2 command. And here we're going to say bucket is going to be bucket. So what this is doing is, so with command, we're just preparing the S3 command. And now we're going to say const data is equal to await S3 client dot send, and we're going to send that command, and that's it. And now we can return it. So we can say return data.content. So we're going to map over the items in the data and return their keys, which just means their names. So data.content, then we want to get data.content. So let's use contents uppercase, contents. Then we want to say data.content. There we go, .map. So we're going to map through it, item. And here we're going to say item.key. Let's use key in capital. There we go. Else is just an empty array. Cool. And that's it. So now we want to export that. So we're going to say export async function. And this is going to be a get. And then we're going to say request. And here we're going to say try catch. And within try, we're going to fetch the list of items from the S3 bucket. So we're going to say const items is equal to await fetch bucket items. We're going to say process.env dot bucket name. Cool. And now we want to send the items back to the client. So we're going to say return next response.json. And this is going to be items. Cool. And for catch, we're simply going to state console.error. And this is going to be error fetching bucket items. And we're going to say this is error And here we're going to say return next response dot JSON error failed to fetch bucket items. Cool. We're going to have a status here of 500. Cool. And just like that, we're all done. So let's go ahead and close this out. So now let's minimize this. So let's see if we have any errors here. Oh, we do have an error. So let's see page.js 57. So let's go over to page.js number 57. It says console.error, error fetching bucket item, error. So what's the problem here? Catch error. So it says unexpected token is not valid JSON. So let's see console.error. Okay, so this is given an error most likely due to this fetch here. So for fetch bucket items, we have it as an empty string, just like we have this as an empty string also. So let's fill that in. So for this is for our post, I believe. Yep, this is our post. So we call this pre-signed URL. Let's see. Let's do this. Let's rename it. So let's just keep it pre-signed URL. Cool. Let's do this. This should still have an error there. There we go. 2 errors now. So where is it? So this should be pre-signed URL. And the second one should be get bucket items. So get bucket items. So let's see if we have an error still. Let's see. Get bucket items. If they throw error, const items, await response items, console.error. So this should be a route. So this should be API / get bucket items. So let's save that. And this should be API / pre-signed URL. Let's see if this works now. Okay. Okay, now we have another error. So S3 client. So module parse failed. Identify S3 client already has been declared. Import here. Where is this? Get bucket items. So let's see. So this is the import S3. Oh, we imported it twice for some reason. Okay, get bucket item. So here we're getting this error because we're saying const S3 client is equal to new S3 client. So we're kind of just stating the same thing twice. So what we can do is we can just rename it as AWS client. So we can import S3 client as AWS client. Cool. So now we can just change this to a new AWS client. Cool. So that works. So let's see if we have that same issue with get buckets as well. Oh, was that from get buckets? Or let's see from pre-signed URL. Yeah, so we're going to have the same issue here. So let's just do the same thing and say as AWS client. And then let's just change this to new AWS client. So that should work a lot better. So now let's see if we refresh this. We still get that same error. Hydration failed because the server blah, blah, blah. So let's see, do we get that same error now? No, we don't. So we just have to refresh it. So now let's see. Let's see if this works. So let's close out of this. Let's close out of this as well. Let's see. Let's close out of this. So let's go to, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to our page.js, and within page.js, I'm just going to modify a return statement here. Basically, I'm going to add some style into it using Tailwind CSS. I'm not going to type all that out. I'm just going to copy and paste it just so we have something that looks a little better. So I'm just going to copy and paste it in there. So we're just going to do this from div to div, delete that, and then we're going to head and just paste that in there and save. So let's go ahead and make this look better. Awesome. So that is it. So this is what it looks like now. Right now, there's no items found in the bucket. So let's do this so we can all see that. You go ahead and just pause this so you can see the whole thing. I'm just going to scroll down slowly so you can see the whole thing. Here you go. So it should be wrapped. So what I could actually do is let's minimize this for a bit, and then let's open this up. There we go. So this is what the whole thing looks like. Let's save that. So here's the return statement, and here's what it looks like. And we'll just scroll down slowly so you can see the whole thing. There we go. There we go. So that's pretty much it. And then we can just scroll back up. So now we can just open this back up, and we can just do this. So make it a little bit more smaller. There we go. Awesome. So now let's see if our application works. So let's go over to Google. So let's go over to Google, and let's look for Captain America Shield, 4K, images. Let's just take this one, and let's just let's download this one. Save image as. So Captain America Shield. Let's just save it as Captain America Shield. Save. Awesome. So go ahead and close out of that. Now let's go ahead and choose a file. So let's choose File, Captain America Shield, Open, and Upload. So now we have an error. So let's see why we have that error. So cannot read properties of undefined, ends with. So the issue comes from our pre-signed URL logic. So here within our params, what we're actually doing is with key, we have key as lowercase. So key is supposed to be in uppercase. So let's have key like such. And then for conditions, this should not be an equal to. This should be a hyphen. And let's save that. So let's see, bucket name. Let's come down to, do we have a bucket name though? Yep, we have bucket name, file type. So let's go ahead and save this. And let's see if this works now. So let's go ahead and try that over. So let's close out of this. And close out of this. Let's see if this works now. So let's upload. So let's refresh first. We have an error now. Let's see. Why do we have this? Clear this out, npm run dev. And let's refresh it. Okay, I guess we're good. So now what we can do is we can try that upload again. So upload, choose file. So right now we have no file chosen, so we can go ahead and just choose file, Captain America Shield, open, and then we can go ahead and upload. So we have another error. So why is that? Which is weird because here we have pre-signed URL 200. So number 43. So let's do this. So console.log, let's try that. And so before we go any further, because that was technically successful, let's refresh this. Since that was technically, there we go. So this is saved within our, what's it called? So this is saved within our, so this is saved within our S3 bucket. So let's see if that's real. So let's open our console. Let's go to S3. Let's head over to our S3 YouTube here. And let's see if we have anything within it. So let's go ahead and click that. And yes, we do. So as you can see, it says Captain America Shield. And here's the object URL. There we go. So we do have that shield. So here's the shield. It's present. So we go ahead and close that. So we do have that Captain America shield. So how do we make it show rather than just list it here? So we've gotten the main step. We have seen the Captain America shield. So how do we now see the image? So in order to see the image rather than just the name of the item within the S3 bucket, what we can do is first let's come down to this upload file, and here where we have if there's no upload response.ok throw blah blah alert file uploaded successfully. So right after file uploaded successfully, what we can do is we can state here fetch bucket items, and just add this function there. What this does is it refreshes the bucket items after upload. So anytime there's an upload, it'll just refresh the bucket items. And then we can come down here to the main part here where we have this UL class name. And rather than UL, so let's comment this out. So rather than UL, what we can say is div class name. We can give this a margin top of 4. We can give it a grid columns of 1. Gap here is 4. And we're just going to state the same thing basically. So bucket items dot length. If it's greater than 0, then we want bucket items dot map item. So basically, as you can see, it's pretty much the same thing, but there's going to be a difference in a short while. Here we're going to have a div, and the key here is going to be item.key, and the class name is going to be background gray 100 border gray 200 pattern of 3 rounded medium, text is small, text gray of 700, and we can just go ahead and close that out, and then just close this div out. Okay, so why do we have this problem? Oh, okay, it's because it's a if else. So now we can state within this div, the image is going to be source, which is going to be item.url. So we're going to pass that, and then alt is going to be item.key. It's going to be capital K again. And then we have class name, which is going to be with full height is auto, rounded is medium, margin bottom is 2. And we're just using image as img rather than next image, just because I'm not deploying this. So it's just to show you rather than use that. And then here we can have p is going to be item dot key. Awesome. So now we want to state else, and this is going to be p class name text gray is going to be 500, text small, and we're going to state no items found in the bucket. Awesome. So here we can go ahead and just delete this portion. Awesome. And that's it. So there we go. So this is what it's going to look like. So rather than having the UL, it's going to look like this. And that's it. So what we want to do now is we can just go ahead and close out of this one. And then for route, we want to be able to pass that, that URL. So what we're going to do is we're going to generate the URLs for the bucket items. So where is it? So here we have const fetch bucket items. And we're going to state in our return. So let's go ahead and do this. So let's comment that out. And for our return, we're going to say return data.content. And we're going to say dot, well, if we have data.contents, then we're going to say data. So data.contents dot map. This is going to be item. And we're going to state const object URL is equal to backticks, and we're going to say HTTPS backslash. We're going to use bucket, so we're going to say bucket dot S3 dot process dot env dot bucket region. There we go. And then we're going to say dot Amazon AWS.com slash, and it's going to be the item key, item.key. And the reason we have it like so is because if you come over here to S3 buckets, if we open this Captain America shield, for example, you can see how this is set up. That's pretty much, we want to mimic this object URL here. That's pretty much why. So we can go back to our S3 here, and we can just go to let's go back to buckets. Awesome. So we can go over to our Visual Studio Code. So we have that. So we can just go ahead and save that. So now that we have this, we want to return the key, which is going to be item.key, as well as the URL. So the URL is going to be object URL. Else, so now we need the else. Let's see, where does it start? Wait a minute. Else, we're going to have empty array. So that's pretty much it. So we'll just go ahead and do this as well. So now we're returning that as well. So let's go ahead and see if this works. So we can go ahead and close out of this. So let's see if this works now. So let's go over to our application here, and let's open this up, and let's refresh this. So it says, there we go. So now it says Captain America's shield, and that's the image. Awesome. So other than these two errors, which we don't need to follow link. There we go. So other than these two errors here, which basically I believe, yeah. So these are just semantics. So you don't even. I mean, you could fix it, but it's just semantics. We don't really care that much about it. We could just close out of it. We can refresh this, and it still works. So we can just close out of it. So other than that, everything works. So let's try another upload. So other than that, everything basically works. As you can see, it has the Captain America Shield.jpg at the bottom there. So that's the name of the image. So let's see if another one will work. So let's go ahead and find something else. So let's go to Google here, and let's find Wolverine wallpaper 4K. Comics, stay signed out. So let's go to images here, and let's just find something cool. So this looks pretty cool. And then let's save image as, we're just gonna save it as Wolverine.jpg. Awesome. So Wolverine.jpg, and then save. And we're just gonna close out of this. So now let's choose file, and I don't think it's done downloading yet. There we go. That's it. So now let's refresh this. So we still only have the Captain America shield in there. Now we can choose file, and we're just gonna pick that Wolverine, open, and upload. So I believe, why isn't it uploading again? So let's refresh this. It should upload. There we go. So it is uploaded. So I don't know why we keep getting that error. Inspect, console. That's weird. So we keep getting an error there, but here there's no indication of an error. So basically it works. Let's see what the error is here. So we keep getting a hydration failure. So that has to do with how I set up the front end. There's probably something I'm doing wrong, because I set this up as a Next.js 14 application within the Next.js 15 package, I guess. So that's probably why. There's probably some new implementations, or I just missed something in the front end. But the basic idea works. The logic works. So everything else just has to do with how I want my front end to be presented. So that is simply that comes down to personal preference. So because of how I set up my front end, there's a hydration error, but the back end and the actual logic works. So if you set up your front end a different way, it's probably going to work. Or if you just look through the front end that I have done well, you'll probably find an error there. Because this isn't an actual application that we're going to deploy or anything, I'm not going to go back and like skim through every line to see where that hydration error is coming from, because our application does work. So here, if we go back to our S3 here, and we go to S3 YouTube, now if we just refresh this, you can see we have 2 items in there. So this is the refresh. It's just 2 items, 2 objects within our bucket. So as you can see, it tells you what the size is, and remember we did give it a size limit. So we can go ahead and just leave it at, so the objects here is 2, so we still have 2 objects. So we can just leave it as this. We have Captain America. So the objects here is 2, so we can just refresh. The objects is still 2. We have Captain America shield and the Wolverine JPG. If you want more info, you can just go ahead and click info here. But that's pretty much it. So we can just go ahead and sign out. And that's it. So always remember to sign out, and we can close out of that. That's it. So this is pretty much what we need to do. Now, the reason why we added so many more permissions, or so many more things to do, things you can do with the S3 bucket, such as put, delete, and all that, is because if you wanted to, you can add a delete icon here, and you just have to make another endpoint for delete, and you'll be able to delete each and every item from the bucket as well. You can also put an edit here, and you can edit each and every image. So you can change this Captain America shield if you click an edit button, and it will change that. So the permissions granted to each to the bucket, that the policy that we gave it allows us to edit and do all that. That's why we added so many policies to it, such as put, delete, and all that. But now we have this, and this is pretty cool if you ask me. So this is pretty much it. So if you guys, we can just go ahead and close out of this as well. So close. So we have two objects here. So here for the fetch bucket items, it doesn't really do much. It's just there. So we can go ahead and refresh this, and as you can see, we still have just those two items, so the Captain America shield.jpg and Wolverine.jpg. So like I said, fetch bucket doesn't really do much since we're using a use effect. So if you click on it, it's not really going to do anything because the use effect is working. If you refresh this, we just have Captain America shield.jpg and Wolverine.jpg, and up there we have no file chosen. So that's pretty much it. We can just go ahead and close out of this. We can quit Chrome, and yeah. So with all that said, that is how you basically connect your Next.js application to an S3 bucket. You can go ahead and play you can go ahead and play around with the logic in the back end to add, delete, and put logics to the application, and play around with the front end as well, because with the policy we generated, we're able to do that. So yeah, with the permissions as well, it allows us to do that. So with all that said, if you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It will mean a great deal for me if you guys did enjoy it, and can go ahead and subscribe and like the video. Let me know what you think in the comment section. We are on our way to 500 subscribers, so if you guys enjoy this video, go ahead and just hit that subscribe button, share the video, everything. So one last time, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.